Hi all, I want to take some time out in this evolution of chess style series, or rather invest some time, looking in particular at Nimzovich, at one of his greatest achievements, Carlsbad 1929. So played in the Czech Republic, I believe. So this is on Wiki. We can actually see the cross table. So we see that he came above Capablanca, and there were other very strong players in there, Max Euwe. Alekhine's missing from here, I believe. Also, fascinatingly, I was told last night as well by a good friend at Chingford Chess Club that there's an annotated game book of this tournament, and indeed there is. On Google Books there's a sample, and I'll put this URL into the description of the video, so have a look at the annotations by Nimzovich, and it reveals a side to him I didn't realise before about nerves and optimism, how he wanted to have more optimism to calm his nerves at the start of the tournament. And he talks about that here, doing some Muller exercises at the start of the tournament, and this is actually quite relevant for people like me. I can't sleep the night before a tournament game for some reason. It does me in after a few rounds. So if I could calm my nerves, he talks about a strict program of Muller exercises. In turn led me for healthy optimism, which dispelled all my lingering fears and worries, and little psychological crisis, which formerly used to hobble my successful career. Nimzovich writes. It's quite amusing the way he writes, actually. I think he's taking a mickey, you know. But let's have a look at his game against Euwe, which was slightly shaky, but he admits that. He admits he was busted. And he talks about Euwe being in time pressure with this horrendous blunder. But his best game was actually the Berlimu game. I think that's vaguely how it's pronounced. We'll have a look at that as well, and maybe the Viraminchik game. Just some of his interesting wins. So the dramatic one, where he was in trouble. Can I find that? It's not that position. It's here. This is a diagram. So we're going to have a look at this Euwe game. It was hypermodernism gone wrong here, I think, because of structural weaknesses. So that's the game we're going to have a look at first, from Carlsbad 1929. But I want to emphasise the human element that I didn't really realise before. So doing this video series is helping me research little details and tournaments which I wouldn't normally have looked at. Okay, we're going to have a look at the Nimzovich-Euwe game, Carlsbad 1929. E3, hypermodern style, not directly occupying the centre. After all, if he had played E4, White's game would have been in its last throws. Sorry. Anyway, so he plays E3. Was it Breyer that said that? White's game is last throws because the pawn's not protected. Here the pawn, as you can see, is protected from two places. So it's very safe there. So knight f6, b3, we have the Nimzovich-Larsen attack. That's why it shares its name with Larsen, who was greatly influenced by Nimzovich as well to play this quite frequently. So what can White gain from this opening? I think intuitively White's gaining a dark square grip a lot of the time. f6 in this game, it can be potentially a liability, but we see White's created so many weaknesses in this game that actually his own king safety and square control was in doubt later on. So f4, d6, queen c1, protecting that bishop, one less tactical liability. Things like knight g4 might be unpleasant at a certain moment. So Euwe castled, knight f3, bishop g4, another logical move from black. So actually black's planning to strike out on the e5 square soon, with e5 liberating black's game very comfortably actually. After knight c6, the only major concession, or minor concession, is the semi-open f file. So we see some pressure on this f file, which turned out to be decisive later on, but for all the wrong reasons, for time trouble, Euwe blundered. But I guess we can say, well, Nimzovich created those f-file elements, that pressure on the f-file. So White castled, now black played e5. Okay, so f takes e, and now knight takes e5. So yes, this is looking as if White's getting kind of exposed here. So why can't he can win a pawn? Because this knight's pinned to the bishop, that's why. So basically White ends up creating a new weakness in this position. it's already fairly unpleasant. He plays d3, so potentially we're weakening here the dark squares, and also the king position's already weakened a little bit, although there's f-file pressure. So knight takes f3, bishop takes f3, black took on f3, I now played d5. So d5 clamps this e3 pawn. It's now a fixed target. Can we say restrain, blockade and destroy here for e3? Or maybe. So queen f1 hitting f6. Okay, there's coordination. Black though plays knight g4, releasing a lot of the pressure on f6, and also weakening white's dark squares as well with this bishop exchange. So this is hypermodernism gone wrong, I would say. Look at all these weaknesses to exploit. After h3, knight e5, the rook also now gets misplaced with rook g3, and black plays a very fine move here, basically putting an end to white's attacking ambitions, at least in theory. He plays f5, white plays queen f4, and now queen f6. So the queen's nicely tucked on f6 on probing white's weak diagonal. So it looks for me to be disastrous positionally for white here, as if, I don't know, there's a lot of holes basically, and holes were discussed by Steinitz. So Nimzovich should know about holes. d4, he creates a big one on e4. After knight f7, okay, white's winning a pawn, but these are not the best circumstances to win a pawn, with the queenside development lagging, the rook misplaced, and the king's safety not particularly brilliant. So queen takes c7. Nimzovich gets away with murder here. In this position, black plays a very good move, rook ac8, hitting c2. But here, instead of taking on c2, that's not the right way to play the position, because then knight a3 and white has some counterplay. There's a really crushing move which, with the help of our engine friends, we can easily find nowadays and refute most of these games. There's queen d6 here. If this had been played, Nimzovich would be in trouble, because the queen and knight are potentially coordinating once the knight is unpinned. So say the rook moves to f3, first unpin the knight by kicking the queen away from the pin. So the knight's now free to move, comes in aggressively, knight g5, and white's had it. For example, rook f2, there'll be queen g3 here, hitting that, threatening knight takes h3. It's all nasty stuff. For example, king f1, knight e4, the knight's on that massive hole that I mentioned earlier. White's queenside is not really helping here. Say the rook moved, queen h2, it's all over in this position. This is just crushing. Let's have a look at another variation. So queen d6. In this position, if no, there isn't another variation there. Let's go back. So queen h. In the game, Nimzovich was a bit lucky in this. He admitted increased his optimism, which might have calmed his nerves down further in future rounds. I think maybe Euwe was approaching time trouble already to play queen h4. It's a bit of a decentralising move, and not only that, encouraging the white rook to go on the f-file for f-file problems later, which black really didn't help actually with this next move if he was in time trouble, because this puts black on a dangerous part now of having to play precisely, because this move does mean that if white can hijack that f-file, then black's going to be in trouble. But black misses a fine shot here. After f takes e3, Nimzovich speculated by daring to develop his queen side, which at the moment is not very well developed. As I say, this is hypermodernism gone wrong, because look at black's position. Look at his rooks, the knight and queen. Okay, the queen could have been better earlier on d6. Nimzovich tries his luck though, and this is where the tactical Nimzovich saves the positional Nimzovich, the positional disaster in fact. He plays knight c3, and because Euwe's in time trouble, and Nimzovich admits that queen takes d4 here, and he would have been completely busted. For example, so this is in effect as a knight sack. So because rook takes f7, deflecting the black rook away from defending c8. So although black's a knight down, there'll be check e2, and look at this, rook f1's threatened. So if the knight counter sack, there's queen takes a1 winning the exchange, queen e1, black's just the exchange up, crushing position. Okay, lucky Nimzovich. Black took the bait with rook takes c3, and guess who's hijacking the f-file after rook af1. f7's now a major tactical problem. It's a tactical disaster for black, this position. Euwe plays e2, probably pretty gutted now. Rook takes f7, queen takes f7. After queen f8 he resigns. Unfortunately he's losing his queen here, or worse. If king h5, there's g4 check. If king g5, then again there's a skewer on h4, and if king h5 again, g4 check. So a bit lucky there. This is showing that, you know, in the concrete of positions, king safety, square weaknesses, holes, all that sort of stuff is still important. So here white had a lot of holes, but tactical precision and time trouble came in. So Nimzovich's tactical side saved him. That's what I would say from this with knight c3. So after taking that bait, and it's lucky there's a pawn on e3 here as well, so it represents a nice temporary sack, this knight c3, luring black to take that. But now this logical f-file pressure strikes. Okay, we'll have a look at some more games after this. I hope you enjoyed this one, and check out the annotated game book. I'll put that in a link in the description of this video. Thanks very much.